Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Tai Gaur Premanande. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajagacharya Ashtotra Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Srila Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Kori Vaishnav Vrind Ki Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की श्री वृंदावन धाम की श्री मायापुर धाम की श्री जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की श्री गंगा माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की युग धर्म श्री हरि नाम संकीर्तन यज्ञ की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glory to the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. So today we are welcome everyone to the special occasion of Shayana Ekadasi. So today we will be reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 3. Okay. I thought he did Text 3 yesterday. No? Okay, sorry. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so I can read 3 and 4. Would you? 4? Okay. So we are reading text number 4. For those of you that are logging in on Mayapur TV and other channels. So, Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse number 4. Before that, we recite the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tadgatram vastu sharanam Saubhagasya cha bhajanam Tvag asya sparshavayuscha Sarva medhasya chaivahi Tadgatram vastu sharanam Saubhagasya cha bhajanam Tvagasya sparashatvayuscha Sarva medhasya chaivahi Tadgatram vastu sharanam Saubhagasya cha bhajanam Tvagasya sparashavayuscha Sarva medhasya chaivahi. Thank you. Word for word. Tat, his. Gatram, bodily surface. Vastu sharanam, of the active principles of all articles. Saubhagasya, of all auspicious opportunities. Cha, and bhajanam, the field of production. Twak, skin. Asya, his. Sparsha, touch. Shri Radha Gopinath ki. Vayo, of the moving airs. Cha, also. Sava, all kinds of. Medasya, of sacrifices. Cha, also. Eva, certainly. He, exactly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Translation. His bodily surface is the breeding ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. Shri Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagavan ki. His skin, like the moving air, is the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch and is the place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. Purport. The air is the moving agent of all the planets, and as such, the generating centers for promotion to the deserving planets. The sacrifices are his bodily surface and are naturally the origin of all auspicious opportunities. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Thagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatirubhascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Canto 2, Chapter 6, titled Purusha Shukta Confirmed. So why does it say Purusha Shukta confirmed? Right? It should say Purusha Shukta, or Purusha, glory the Purusha Shukta confirmed. Because the Purusha Shukta appears in the Rig Vedas, and here in the Bhagavatam, we find the section, basically what Prabhupada is, or the Acharya is presenting here, is that this Purusha Shukta corroborates with what's stated in the Purusha Shukta prayers that appears in the Rig Veda. Now these Purusha Shukta prayers, or the hymns, usually we find them chanted or recited at the time of the installation of deities in the temple. And I remember 3 years ago, last, when His Holiness Bhakti Vidyapurna Swami had come to Sydney, he had done a yagya here and then was chanting, these were the verses that were being chanting, the Purusha Shukta prayers. So the Purusha Shukta, and what's being confirmed here is a personality that's being spoken about is Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. So that's what the Bhagavatam is taking us from where we are, from where it's the second canto, and then it'll gradually take us to the 10th canto, which talks about Krishna's pastimes. But prior to that, it builds up from the different avatars and the incarnations, and then the different pastimes of the devotees. So that's what it's called, Purusha Shukta confirm. Or Purusha Shukta, as I said earlier, these hymns appear in the Rig Veda, and also some portions of it appear in the Yajur Veda. So that's where it originates from. Now, when we read this, obviously when I read this, I said, okay, what's there in it? How do I comprehend this? Because Prabhupada is making a statement here in this purport, or he's basically stating the claim that our acharyas say, the air is the moving agent of all the planets. And as we understand, that to some extent contradicts modern science, because they say the planets are moved by, what are they moved by? Gravity. And here Prabhupada is saying the air is the moving agent of all planets, which means the air is the one that is responsible for the movement of those planets. Now, in this chapter we see how Garbhodakashayi, the limbs of Garbhodakashayi Vishnu provide the ingredients for the universe. So later on, when we head towards the 10th chapter of this canto, we'll see that how these limbs come about. How do these limbs originate? Because there's a purpose behind everything. It's so the question or the theme of these first 17 verses of this chapter, the theme is, what is the universe composed of? For example, we are sitting in this building here. This, obviously, to an external vision, this is a temple. I mean, this is a building, but we know it's actually a tirtha, because the Lordship Sri Radha Gopinath Srila Prabhupada residing here. So it's actually a tirtha, or none other than an embassy of the spiritual world. But to mundane vision outside, it seems like a structure that's built. And naturally, someone will ask, okay, what is this structure made up of? We'll say, earth, water, fire, air, the different constituents of elements that are used here. So the theme of these first 17 verses, what is this universe composed of? And in the purport, like I said, we say the air is the moving agent of all the planets. As we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, I may have shared this in some of the previous classes, but how yogis travel to other planets. And basically, as it is said, the yogi places his mind and intelligence within the air that's circulating inside his body. And through, it's basically the preferences, CC RD 5.22. The yogi places the mind and intelligence within the air that's circulating within his body. And then to the process of breath control, that he can mix that air with the air that's circulating outside the body, which is the whole of the universe, and then in that way he or she can travel to any part of the universe, any planet he or she resides, they want to go. So that's the medium through which yogis travel. Obviously, today we find that people are wanting to spend billions of dollars to go to the other planets. In fact, I was just hearing the other day, I had heard about this, but I wasn't fully aware of the fact that there's some organization that is actually selling land on the moon. So you can buy a piece of land on the moon, and I'm not surprised, but there's some famous celebrities who bought a piece of land, and when I asked how much it would cost, about 20 million for just like a small tract of land, let's say just size of this, or maybe just wouldn't be bigger than this room. You're paying $20 million for a piece of land on the moon. So that's how people we're being educated into this phenomena that soon we'll be able to buy a house on the moon, and then guess what? Sometimes we'll be able to go on a vacation to the moon and spend because Earth's getting too populated. So guess what? It'll maybe, who knows, 50 years from now, people will say, for this coming long weekend, I'm going to the moon, and I'll be on the moon for 3 days and then come back. So see you when I'm back. But obviously, the Shastras have a different approach to this. Now, when I was reading about air in general, and I came across a purport by Srila Prabhupada, Canto 3, Chapter 6, Verse 9. And I wasn't aware. Do you know do you know the number of the different kinds of air in the body? We just think of it as for granted as air. Do you know how many different kinds of air there are in the body itself? 10. So the air that passes through our nose, which helps us breathe, that's one kind of air, and that's called the prana. And then there is the other kind of air that passes through the rectum, which helps us evacuate. That's another kind of air. That's called apana. The air which adjusts the foods, after eating a lot. It happens, we had a big festival last week, so it's possible some of us may have eaten a lot. So when we eat a lot and all of a sudden we burp, just to adjust the air in the body, that is called as samana. And then there is this air that passes through our throat, and if that air stops, then we suffocate. That is known as udana. Similarly, there is the total air which circulates all throughout the body, which is known as vyana. And the air, I'm just cutting through it, but the air that helps with increasing our appetite, that actually is spoken about in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15. That, the air in the body that causes, that helps with digestion, that is known as Krikera. And the air that sustains us all is known as Dhananjaya. So, for any of the readers that are interested, you all can refer to Canto 3, chapter 6 and verse 9. And also something for us to know when we speak to people outside and we tell them, oh, these are the different kinds of air, and they'll be fascinated. And they'll say, oh, wow, where'd you get this from? And then you can show them the Bhagavatam, and this is a great way to sell copies of the Srimad Bhagavatam, because it talks about information that will help them. Obviously, Bhagavatam is complete, and it speaks about the glories of the Lord and its devotees. But sometimes, I've found that this kind of information, especially about if you go into the psychology of the mind that's spoken about in the 4th canto, and the story of King Puranjana, the allegories that are given. It's quite useful when people read that and then they see, oh wow, that means this is more than a religious or sectarian text. It goes beyond and speaks about how I can apply this in my life and live a more holistic life. So now, what is this meant to take us to? What is this meant to conclude? In a sense, what is this information here? Okay, his bodily surface is a breeding ground for the active principles of everything and for all kinds of auspicious opportunities. His skin like the moving air, the generating center for all kinds of sense of touch, and it's a place for performing all kinds of sacrifice. Oh, and by the way, in that section that talks about the air, it says that the center of the generation of air is the heart. So, when we read these sections or these passages that talks about the different limbs of the body of the Lord, what do they allude to? And that basically alludes to how the Lord is the cause of all causes. And there's a very nice purport that's given in chapter 10 of this canto, verse 16, how the Lord is the cause of all causes, because it says everything is interdependent in one sense. If you see the universal form of the Lord, as we'll see, now we are talking about the air and the sense of touch. Next we'll see the hairs in the body and how they all function. But just think of it, right? What am I most dependent on today? I'll say my phone, right? I mean, even if I walk 200 meters without a phone, I'll just feel that my life air has been taken away from me. So that's how dependent I am on my phone. Or any gadget. What is a gadget dependent upon? Electricity. Right? Because you have to charge your gadget, and that's how it works. Electricity. What is electricity dependent upon? The powerhouse that's functioning in a city or in a state, that the electricity powerhouse from which power generates. And what is that powerhouse dependent upon? It's dependent upon the reservoir of water in the powerhouse itself. What is the water dependent upon? The clouds. And what do the clouds depend upon? The sun. What does the sun depend upon? Creation. And what does the creation depend upon? The movement of the Lord. So how we see the Lord as the cause of all causes. And that's what Bhagavatam, through this chapter, and then we'll see later on when we get to the 10th chapter of this canto, where Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. That's what we will come to. Now, what exactly are we referring to when we talk of these different limbs of the body? And it is said that and there's a very nice, again, verse in purport in chapter 10, how a king, as the king moves, his subjects, or his entourage follows. So similarly, this whole total creation is in motion. And it's in motion that is set by the Supreme Lord Himself. And as the moment this motion stops, that's when us as living entities who are dependent upon the Lord, our sensual activities also stop. So that's why the Lord is the cause of all causes. And it goes on to say how how do these limbs come into existence? So it's actually a very simple sequence here. If for us, that as we read through, there's a tendency for us to understand, to kind of just feel out of place. But it all starts with the Lord's desire. So when the Lord wants to see, right? As soon as the Lord wants to see, there is the sun, which is represented on the universal body of the Lord. From that sun, I'm just giving you one example. We'll see through many other examples. From that sun comes the controlling deity that controls this, the movement of it. I mean, that's been deputed to the Lord, to the agent is the Devata, which is known as the Adi Daiva. And then, from the interaction of these two, comes about the gross, the sense perception plus the sense object. So, from sun, basically then comes, the Devata that controls it, and then we get what is known as the object or the power or the perception of vision and the eyes. So anything that we are seeing right now, we are not the first seers of it. Krishna or the Virat Rupa, basically Virat Rupa first desires, and as he desires, then everything else comes into existence. So everything is. And it takes us to the conclusion that how Virat Rupa in one sense is not impersonal. It comes from a person. It has its desires. And so similarly for us too, when we first desire and then we endeavor. But Krishna's desiring and act for the thing to manifest is actually, there's no, as soon as Krishna desires, things happen. Unlike for us, we desire something and sometimes it may happen, sometimes it may not happen. So these different elements, so first is the Lord's desire and the gross object, and which are denoted by these Sanskrit words. If you see twak, skin, so skin is translated in Sanskrit as, in this context, as twak. And then through that twak, you basically get the controlling demigod who will regulate the interaction, or basically facilitate the interaction. And then from there, you actually, the end product is what we see is the sense perception plus the object. So in this case, it is sense of touch. So what we end up with is the sense of touch, and how we experience touch is through our skin. Now, the last part of this purport, basically speaks about sacrifice. How the sacrifices are as bodily surface and are naturally the origin of all auspicious opportunities. So we are in this glorious age of Kali Yuga, and each age has a sacrifice that is meant for the upliftment or the perfection of its masses. And in this age, the sacrifice is Sankirtan Yagya, loudly chanting the holy names, or congregation chanting of the holy names of the Lord. And today too, we are actually observing a sacrifice, which is the Ekadasi Vrata. And the Ekadasi is known as Shayana Ekadasi. So I just thought maybe I'll just speak a few words in this glory of this particular Ekadasi, because it is said that, I don't know, one maybe taken out of context, but what I read is that if you read the glories of the Ekadasi, you get the same benefit as though you've observed the Ekadasi. So this Ekadasi, there's a conversation between Krishna and Maharaj Yudhishthir. And Maharaj Yudhishthir asks Krishna, can you tell me about this? What's the Ekadasi that falls on this particular day? And then, or this section within the particular month. And then Krishna goes on to saying, okay, I'll share with you this pastime that happened. And this pastime is such that once during the age of Satya Yuga, there was a king named Mandata. He was ruling in the Surya Vamsha, the Sun dynasty, the dynasty in which Lord Ramachandra took birth, or he appeared. So this king was virtuous, pious, religious, was emblem of all good qualities that you find in kings. And he treated his subjects like his own children. Unfortunately today we see leaders in the world who, more than anything else, they're just concerned with themselves, and they're not even ashamed of saying so. For example, the president of one country, despite the surge in COVID-19 cases, stated that we will relax these restrictions, and the reason that prompted him to relax the restrictions were because the upcoming elections. And by doing so, people will come to the rallies and support him. So that's what was actually his agenda behind easing the restrictions. So he's not concerned about the people, he's only concerned about him being re-elected. So you see that these are the kind of leaders that we are under. I was speaking to one devotee 2-3 years ago, and speaking about the same leader. And he said that our Krishna consciousness has to be very strong, because we are under the control of these leaders who, just by the just by one instruction, they can really create havoc in the lives of people. So more than anything else, our Krishna consciousness really has to be very deep. We have to be, because we can't rely on these leaders today. So we find such kind of leaders. But anyway, this King Mandata was a pious, a virtuous leader. There was no drought, no sort of shortages in his kingdom. People were happy, and so on and so forth. But however, it just happened at one particular time that there was a drought for over 3 years. And because of drought, there was famine. So villages or the people didn't have food to eat. And because there was no food to eat, and the Brahmins couldn't offer oblations of ghee into the sacrifice. And similarly, the Brahmins couldn't even read the Vedas or study the Vedas or teach the Vedas. So it was actually quite an unfortunate scene that was happening in his kingdom. So the subjects went up to him and said, "My dear king, you've taken such good care of us, but however we are faced with this situation, what do we do?" And the king said that, actually I've been thinking about it. And he said, actually whenever there is some calamity or some sense of misfortune in the kingdom, it's the responsibility of the king, and it's due to the sinful reaction of the king due to which the subjects suffer. So you see how the king is taking responsibility for what's happened. And unlike today, where it just becomes a blame game, not you, me, you're the one who helped with, orchestrating this. And not only this leader is blaming another country altogether that, this happened in another country. Why am I to be blamed for this? So, but the king says that actually when I looked at my record, when I look at my sheet or my activities, as per my knowledge, I don't see any traces of sinful activity. So I'm perplexed as to how could this have happened. But I will vow to take some measure which will help counteract this situation. So anyway, this king then goes to, along with his entourage, he goes to the ashram of a very famous sage known as Angira Muni. And he goes to Angira Muni, and Angira Muni says, well, actually you yourself are very pious, and you yourself haven't done any sinful actions. But however, in your kingdom, there is this one Shudra who is unlawfully doing austerities and sacrifices. And because this one Shudra doing unlawful penances and austerities, there is this situation in your kingdom. So I say you go and kill, or you punish this Shudra. And the king says, well, I can't inflict any pain or any punishment upon this living entity who's been offenseless. Like, he's not done any offense. How can I hurt this person? You please give me another solution. And then the Rishi, Angira Muni, basically says, okay, there is this particular day coming up soon, which is known as the Shine Ekadasi. This is Ekadasi. And if you follow this Ekadasi, and if you ask all your subjects to follow this Ekadasi, everything will be resolved. You will receive abundant rain in your kingdom, and all of the other problems will come to a closure. So the king happily goes back to his kingdom and gathers all the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, and tell them that please on this particular day observe this fast, and by observing this fast you will all our problems will be solved. And as the day comes, all the subjects of the kingdom fast on this day, and later on, lo and behold, everything, they receive abundant supply of rainfall, which nourishes their crops, and we see that it's all back to where it was. So that's the merit of fasting on the Ekadasi, and because we talk about sacrifices. So on Ekadasi, we generally sacrifice more than even fasting or observing what you may say the external aspects of Ekadasi, is to deepen our spiritual practices today. Some of us take a vow to chant extra rounds, do more service. And that's what actually pleases Krishna more anything else. So Ekadasis are a great impetus for our spiritual growth. So that's why we have the sacrifice. And I would like to end with one story here that I just heard yesterday. My Guru Maharaj was saying that how for devotees, if they live their life in perfect Krishna consciousness, how it is that very fact that they were able to continue or persevere in the devotional service despite all obstacles, their life itself becomes all auspicious. And Maharaj was saying that there was this one devotee named Ramdas, a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he was African American, and he was a pujari in the Los Angeles temple, New Dwarka community. And then towards the end of his life, I think he developed some sort of disease. Maybe he was facing cancer of some sort. So he moved to Vrindavan, and he had a very loving and qualified wife who served him, and they basically were a great examples to the New Dwarka community. So he ended up moving to Vrindavan to spend the last few days, and he attracted a lot of, where he was staying, he attracted a lot of sacred relics, sacred items of worship, and it became an exhibition because he had attracted all these relics, and people were so thrilled to come and see him and be touched by his devotion. And in some course of time, he left his body, and after he left his body, he appeared to his wife or to some other devotees too. And he was going through a lot of pain prior to leaving his body, and obviously there were some other challenges that he had. So after he appeared to his wife and other devotees, he appeared very, very jubilant and happy and very blissful. And he told his wife, "You don't know how good does it feel to be here on this side. Only if I were to tell you how amazing it is on this side. All that I went through was just a small price to pay to come on this side. And it's the most amazing thing to be here." So Maharaj was relaying this point that how we persevere in our bhakti, we stay committed to a practice, and that itself brings us all auspiciousness, even though we may not see it in that sense. And it echoes a similar verse in the Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Tatenu Kampa Sumikshumana, where Lord Brahma says that those that, I don't have the verse in front of me, but those that persevere through their devotion to you despite of all these obstacles, they become the rightful heirs to attain your mercy. So whatever challenges or sacrifices we make for the mission of Srila Prabhupada and his associates, and ultimately our Lord Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, they're all auspicious, and we should be thrilled to be participating in the mission of Lord Chaitanya and Srila Prabhupada. Okay, I think that's all I had to say for today. Any questions or comments? Okay, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki. Srila Prabhupada ki. Go Premanandi.